Hello, good morning, and welcome to Monday's edition of Politics at Jack and Sam's Daily, the podcast that gives you everything you need to know about the day ahead in British politics in less than 20 minutes.
It's Monday, December the 16th. It's the week before Christmas. The Prime Minister is out of the country, Jack. Who'd have thought it? Perhaps given this time of year and his fondness for foreign travel, maybe he's going to be Santa this year, next week. Who can say? Anyway, without a coup, there's been a seamless transition of power back home. The head of the civil service from today is Chris Wormold, who's taking over from Simon Case.
But watch out, Downing Street. Angela Rayner is talking about launching a revolution today, so who knows what's going on while the Prime Minister is away. What should we say? My name is Jack Blanchard, Politico. With me, you can hear Sam Coates of Sky News. Yes, it's Christmas week, but our podcast will be going all the way through until Thursday, and the Prime Minister will be busying away too, Sam. He is in Norway today, which is very festive, isn't it? Should we just quickly run through the week before we get into the day ahead? Keir Starmer in Norway, and then also in Estonia, because one foreign country is not enough for this Prime Minister on a Monday morning. Angela Rayner is in Leeds announcing her revolution. It's a revolution in local government. And we're expecting ministers to announce the sale of the Royal Mail today to a Czech billionaire. We should also say in Germany, Chancellor Olaf Scholz is facing a no-confidence motion today. He's going to lose that, and there's going to be an election announced today for February 23rd.
Tomorrow, Tuesday, is the last cabinet meeting of the year, and we'll have for the first time Chris Wormold taking the notes in the corner as the new cabinet secretary.
Wednesday is the final PMQs of the year. Last time we see Keir Starmer go head-to-head with Kemi Badenoch, and we'll get the latest inflation figures out at 7 a.m. Wednesday morning.
On Thursday, Keir Starmer is appearing before the Liaison Committee. That is the committee of all the chairs of all the different select committees for an end-of-year grilling. They're going to size him up, find out what they think, ask him what they think they need to know, Parliament needs to know. As well, that day, there'll be an interest rate decision. Could the path for interest rates coming down have slowed because of bad economic news? And the Public Accounts Committee, there's going to be transport officials appearing before the Public Accounts Committee talking about HS2.
Journalists always get excited about liaison committee appearances. It's not often you see the Prime Minister sit down before a bunch of senior MPs and get a real grilling. Even when it was like Boris Johnson, liaison committee ended up being really boring. Can you imagine what it would be like with Keir Starmer doing 2 hours of government policy? Anyway, something for us all to look forward to on the last day of term. Thursday is the last day of term. Parliament rises for recess. Friday's recess. That's it. We're all going home for Christmas for lots of food and Christmas pud. Let's talk about the day ahead, Sam, and let's talk about spying, because that is the story on the front page of every newspaper this morning. Just bring us up to speed, Sam, with what is going on here.
So a lot of people will have seen the headlines over the last few days, but I have to say it's quite complicated. So I actually got up at 4:45 this morning to basically read myself in, and I've been reading the court documents on this since the early hours to bring myself up to speed. And it is an incredible story that's going to have an impact right at the heart of our political system, both on questions about whether the security service has been doing a good job, questions about UK-China relations, and then the thing that could well explode later today in the Commons is whether or not MPs, maybe Richard Tice, are going to name the secret spy at the heart of the scandal that links Beijing to the royal family. But let me just, for those readers who perhaps didn't spend the weekend reading every single word of this story, bring you up to speed with the sort of background, because it becomes a lot more demystified once you understand sort of where this starts. So basically, this is all about a Chinese-born national who we can only at the moment refer to as H6. He's a 50-year-old. He was born in China. He came to the UK in 2002 to study. He did languages. He did a master's in public administration and public policy at York, so he knows the British system inside out, and basically worked here for several years, and in 2013 got permission to stay indefinite leave to remain, and set up all sorts of businesses that are at the heart of all the coverage linking China to the UK. Now, he basically started commuting in the last sort of 10 years, and we would spend 2 weeks a month in China and 2 weeks a month in the UK, all the way through to November the 6th, 2021. And at that point, he was stopped from entering the UK and made to hand over his phone and his digital devices. And the security services kept them for about 3-4 days. And it's what happened then in 2021 that has informed everything that we're hearing about now. Because basically, the security services just sucked all the information out of their mobile phone and just downloaded all of his data. God forbid if anybody did that to you or me, Jack. But that is what has happened to H6. And that triggered a lot of alarm bells within the security services, although they didn't act very fast. And in 2022, he was told that he might well end up being accused of being too close to the Chinese state, and that he had links to an organization which is essentially a Chinese Communist Party intelligence organization called the United Front Work Department. And then in March 2023, he was banned from coming to the UK. So from November the 6th, 2021 through to March 2023, he was still able to go back and forth, even though the security services appear to have had quite a lot of information about his links to an intelligence organization in China. And then in March 2023, he was banned from entering the UK. And what's been going on since then is he's been appealing, and basically the appeals have failed. And then on Thursday, all the court documents were published on the government website relating to his appeal, including the judgment. And that is where we've got all the information from. And in those court documents, and this is extraordinary, the judge effectively decides to name his links to Prince Andrew as one of the key reasons why the court was worried that he was operating in a clandestine way and able to influence people in kind of senior circles in the UK. And the download of the data back in 2021 contained the details of his links to Prince Andrew. Apparently, a senior aide to Prince Andrew, Dominic Hampshire, wrote in a letter to H6 that he could work on behalf of the Duke, building up potential partners, investors in China. And this is the reason, according to the court, that he is suspected of interference in the British state and has been banned. And the court document reveals lots of other links to other organisations which have senior well-known politicians involved. And what you're seeing at the moment is the attempt by the media to track H6's activities over the last few years and find out who he has linked to, all because of that decision in 2021 to download all of his data from his phone.
There you go. An entire spy thriller from Sam Coates in 2.5 minutes. Aren't you all lucky? This all matters for various reasons. One, because Prince Andrew, of course, is at the heart of the British establishment, and some of the very detailed stuff in those court documents about the links between Prince Andrew and this unnamed guy are fascinating. But there is political jeopardy here for the government, and that's why you and I are talking about it this morning, Sam. And because the context of all this, of course, is that we have a Prime Minister now in place for almost 6 months who is, even though he won't use this phrase, resetting Britain's relations with China. We've had Tory government after Tory government who's been very, very hawkish on China, has put quite a lot of distance between the UK and China diplomatically. Keir Starmer is taking a slightly different approach, and we've seen that repeatedly. We know there is an ongoing audit happening, as they call it, inside Whitehall of Britain's relations with China. We know that Chancellor Rachel Reeves will be going to Beijing early in the new year. We're expecting Keir Starmer himself to go to Beijing in the new year. He met with President Xi recently, the first British Prime Minister to do so in 5 or 6 years, and Labour very keen to talk up the economic benefits of having good relations with China, as well as emphasising the national security risks that come with that, in a way that previous Conservative Prime Ministers were either didn't want to do, or in Rishi Sunak's case were reluctant to do because of the pressure they get from their own party. So every time a big story about Chinese espionage like this, and there aren't many more colourful than this one, emerge in the papers and make the front pages, it puts pressure on the Prime Minister to tread carefully in what he's trying to do now, and therefore when Keir Starmer stands up this morning in a press conference in Norway, which is where he is, he's going to announce a green energy deal this morning with the Prime Minister of Norway. The questions, or such as they are from British journalists, will be focused on What did you know about this alleged spy? Are you concerned about it? Should we really be having such closer relations with China in this context where the Chinese are doing this kind of thing, trying to essentially infiltrate the British royal family, it would seem. And Keir Starmer is going to have to answer questions about that today, Sam. Every time one of these stories pops up, it's going to add that pressure on him to at least to make sure he gets this right.
All the pressure from Whitehall will be to say as little as possible and cause as little fuss as possible with China. But often that, and I suspect actually the instincts of Labour ministers will be to do the same. Back in March, I revealed that the Chinese were thought to be behind this mega hack of MOD systems. It was the outsourced MOD HR system with all sorts of names of people, current and former personnel that had been hacked. And inside Whitehall, they were completely clear privately that the people behind the hack were China. And then James Cleverly and others stood up in the Commons, and not a whisper was made by ministers of who it actually was in public. And it was incredible. People were quite openly chatting about the role of China, the malign role of China, but they just don't dare do it in public. And that is a weird, curious and frankly uncomfortable situation to be in. And that was before you had a government that is basically in a position where it is going to have to rely on China, whether it likes it or not, because of its commitments. I would argue that the 2030 green power promise to decarbonise our electricity supply and then move to a low carbon environment cannot be done on UK manufacturing alone. And the bottom line is it's going to rely on us importing a lot of green tech from China. So the political choices that the government have already made are in effect dictating our diplomatic choices here, and probably the Tories would have had to do the same, but nudging us ever closer to China, just at the point where the US is trying to pull everyone further away. It's quite an uncomfortable position, but when you do have evidence of malign Chinese activity, basically the reaction of the British state is to downplay it.
There are three or four big moments today, Monday, when this issue is going to come up and rear its head in public. The first is Keir Starmer's press conference this morning in Norway, where he will surely be asked about it. Second is the Downing Street lobby briefing, which will be happening at 11:30, when there will certainly be a lot of questions at the Prime Minister's poor, beleaguered spokesman about this, while he tries very hard to say nothing at all about it, I'm sure. David Lammy, the Foreign Secretary, is hosting Australian foreign and defence ministers in the UK today, and they will be holding a press conference today, and they're obviously talking about it's maybe not obvious, but they will be talking about the AUKUS joint missile deal that Britain, Australia and America signed about 12 months ago. Now that defence deal is actually all about trying to contain China in the South Pacific. So that will be something they are talking about anyway. So when that press conference happens, you would expect there to be questions about Chinese espionage there as well. But then potentially most interestingly of all, as you alluded to earlier, Sam, is the prospect of a moment in the House of Commons. Now, there are Tory MPs saying that they want to trigger an urgent question on this issue in the House of Commons this afternoon. That is entirely up to the Commons Speaker, Lindsay Hoyle, as to whether that happens. If Lindsay Hoyle wants it to happen, then it will. And we will get a very interesting debate happening in the Commons at probably about 3:30 in the afternoon, where MPs will have the chance to say what they think about this. And some of them are threatening to use what's called parliamentary privilege. That basically is a sort of legal loophole that allows MPs to say whatever the heck they want when they're standing in the Commons chamber, regardless of, laws and libel and court orders and all the rest of it. And so one of them may actually use parliamentary privilege in that moment to name this spy. Now, there are people threatening to do that today if they get the opportunity. Common speakers hate things like this. They absolutely hate it. I wouldn't be surprised if Lindsay Hoyle did not grant the urgent question purely because he's worried someone will do that, or he might say at the start, look, you lot, you better not name this guy if we do it. So one to watch this afternoon, but could be a really interesting moment, Sam, if it happens.
I can imagine Lindsay Hoyle actually avoiding this whole debate because it involves Prince Andrew, and there's nothing that speakers like even less than the use of parliamentary sovereignty and parliamentary privilege to name things than talking about the royal family, because it starts to cross some of the streams of the British state when that happens, and we know how badly that ended up in Ghostbusters. But this question of an anonymity is fascinating, and and in no small part troubling. Okay, so everyone wants to know who H6 is, right? And I went through the court documents, and the court documents don't spell out why H6 is subject to anonymity. It says that he is, and it says that he's been granted, but I cannot find out why that is. What I can find out much more easily is who H6 is. You just have to look on the internet. And he's there. He's named all over the internet. He's named all over the world. He's named in foreign media. He's named all over social media. It takes you 3 seconds to find out the name of the person that we are all talking about. And it is mad, it seems to me, that I know less about why he's being kept anonymous than I do, details about his life, which are freely available, even though in those court documents, the actual head of MI5 says that the United Front Work Department, which this guy has links to, is, quote, mounting patient, well-funded, deceptive campaigns to buy and exert influence. So there is a very clear public interest in people knowing who he is so they can see the kind of activities he's been on. It might trigger some memories. This is the argument, by the way, in the Daily Mail leader this morning, which I thought was rather good. You could see... it might jog some memories. People might know who he is. All over the weekend, we had politicians scratching their heads going, well, I'm pictured with, H6, but I've got no memory of who he is, even though he turned up at this event and that event. But somebody in Westminster probably does know about his activities, and just seeing a picture of him, seeing his name, will probably help everybody understand what he's been up to.
There's one more area of policy jeopardy for the government on this, Sam, and this is a little known but important scheme that is supposed to have been brought in by now, called the Foreign Influence Registration Scheme. Now, this is something that was announced under one of the last Tory governments, I think, in 2022, and it's essentially a register that the government has decided we need, and it was introduced under a recent National Security Act, where essentially foreign lobbyists have to register their names and their areas of influence on an official state register here. And the idea was to try and clamp down and keep a close eye on people working with or closely associated with foreign states who are essentially trying to influence the British government. Now, this thing was announced, lots of fanfare, this was going to be a big thing, and according to the Tories, it was all ready to go just before they called a snap election and then lost it, and since then the thing has disappeared. You may remember a PMQ session, Sam, a couple of months ago where Rishi Sunak brought this up and was asking Keir Starmer what's happened to this influence register that has never been announced. The UK government ministers are, surprise, surprise, blaming the delay on the last government, saying that they hadn't set the scheme up properly and that's why it was taking longer. Nobody else in Whitehall really believes that. The general vibe in Whitehall is that this has been delayed by Labour whilst Labour considers its relationship with China, because this is a very sensitive subject in terms of relations with China, and if you start demanding Chinese firms and business and people put their names on this register, then that can rock the boat a little. That isn't to say that it's never going to happen, but it has definitely been delayed, and here we are suddenly with this big foreign influence scandal blowing up. So don't be surprised if this debate does happen in the Commons today, or indeed if we hear Tory MPs talking about this issue on the airways today, some of them start asking what on earth has happened to this lobbying register that's supposed to be in place.
I think there's one other thing which has always fascinated me, which is I think there are questions about how the security services acted and whether or not, as I was saying earlier, they were quick enough, because there were years between them finding stuff out and then finally acting. It always strikes me that in this country, we just turn a blind eye to the activities of the security services. In America, they properly investigate them. There's a much healthier sense that they should be subject to democratic scrutiny. There are congressional committees. There's a lot more information about how they operate, and they're the subject of debate. In Britain, we're all very British about it. Oh, the good chaps must know what they're doing. But even British security ministers think there is too little oversight of the security services. They struggle to get the truth when they go and see the station chiefs. One of them was telling me, and they struggle to basically hold them to account when the security services themselves mess up, do things wrong, go over budget. We have far too much of a good chap's approach to the security services, and it really irritates the very ministers who, think that it's their job to hold them to account. So I'm sure we'll brush that under the carpet as well today, but it is worth thinking, shouldn't the security services actually face more questions and more scrutiny, because they can be a law unto themselves?
Sam, we've spent so much time talking about spying that we haven't left very much time to talk about Angela Rayner's reorganisation of local government, which is not to say that the reorganisation of local government isn't important, Sam, because it is. But unfortunately, in a 20-minute podcast, we don't have much time to say that Angela Rayner is going to Yorkshire today. She will be in Leeds. She will make a big speech where she is going to announce the biggest overhaul of local government in years. And speaking as someone who spent years of my own life reporting on local government, I'm very interested in it. And I'm really sorry that I can't tell you all about it right now. But they're going to get rid of two-tier councils and bring in single unitary authorities, and there'll be more powers for mayors, and that's quite a big deal in parts of the country where they care about local government a lot. That's all I've got.
It's massive, but that's all we've got time for. We will be back tomorrow on Tuesday for the third from final of 2024 Politics at Jack and Sam. See you then.
Cheers. Bye-bye.